One thing I really I think true and dear to my heart is influence engineers with data that supports design, influence priority with money, and then celebrate both with technical and financial data. I feel like that's been a real great formula where we get, ultimately, how do we get folks to do the things we feel are important? And you got to really work backwards from, look, what's important to an engineer? What's important to a product person? What's important to a leader?
So the TAC is really excited to get Framework 2024 to the community. And then just know that practitioners are really encouraged to contribute to the development and maintenance of the framework by continuing to make those suggestions and joining working groups and contributing to the awesome FinOps Foundation content.
Good morning and good afternoon, good evening, I guess, for some of you. Great to have you all here at the March FinOps Foundation Summit. So we're going to take a deep breath. We're very excited about this one. It's a huge summit. We've got so many new things coming out that we're sharing with you from the team, from the community. We're doing something new this time. We've got a split stream going. So there's a live stream happening on YouTube. Hello to the folks there. There's also a Zoom going for our practitioner members as well. And wanted to remind everybody of the FinOps Foundation Code of Conduct. So everybody, we want your contributions in chat. We want you to share at the end in the conversations, but please be kind, be inclusive, don't do sales pitches, please don't use bots, and don't share any confidential or anti-competitive information in the Zoom. This summit is, I would say, the second biggest summit of the year for us. We did State of FinOps last year, which is always a huge push to get to. Hopefully you all have seen data.finops.org. This summit is the FinOps Framework 2024 reveal, which is going to share with you a lot of the updates happening to the core framework of FinOps itself. We at the Foundation are here to advance the people who manage the value of cloud. So we're a membership-based trade association. We've got over 16,000 practitioners now part of the Foundation, including those from 48 of the Fortune 50 here in the US, including massive organizations around the world as well. And we're really focused around a few key areas: training, education, certification, community, like this meeting. We also do the frameworks we're going to talk about, State of FinOps, which we saw last month, landscape certifications, criteria, as well as Focus, which is the FinOps open cost and usage specification that is working its way toward a 1.0 launch right now that we'll hear more about later in the year. This summit is going to cover a lot of topics. We always like to pack it in. So first and foremost, we're going to hear about Framework 2024 and the updates happening there from some of our staff, as well as Kim Wier, who is our Technical Advisory Council chairperson. We're going to hear about some of the new speakers coming for FinOps X in San Diego, which is 90 days away, and also hear from Capital One on some of their journey and Granica on lessons learned in AI. So I got to hit this one more time for all the people joining. We are 90 days from the biggest FinOps conference that has ever happened. This is happening in San Diego. Again, last year we had 1,100 people. This one should be well over 1,800 people. Hotels are nearly almost sold out. Tickets are going fast. Early bird ends in 7 days. Last chance to get any kind of discounted pricing on tickets. And we've got over 90 speakers already confirmed. We're expecting that number to come up well over 100. Some fantastic content from a big range of new faces this year. Very few repeat speakers, a lot of new brands, a lot of new content, but critically, the content is focused on 300 plus level content. We're asking the speakers to come out with content that you can take back to your offices, to your teams with learnings. You should have lots of slides where you're putting your camera up to take photos, lots of notes that you can take to actually go implement and action your practice. Hot off the presses, as in like this morning, the agenda for FinOps X has been updated. We have, I think, over 70 sessions currently listed. We are still adding additional sessions. We have the keynote sessions still coming as being listed, more and more speakers being added there. Fantastic folks from, brands ranging across, giant companies from the Fortune 50 to, tech folks like Uber and Adobe and Reddit, to healthcare brands, to government, international speakers. We got people coming in. So far, I think it's from over 20 countries we've had registered from as part of this. And We do have this year, by popular demand, coming back the VP Cloud panel. So we've got VP speakers from all three of the top clouds coming into the keynotes to share strategy and path in this direction. And all four of the top clouds are going to be on site as sponsors with their product and engineering leaders to talk to you about what's happening in the FinOps space, answer questions. And we're hoping, and we've made room for the clouds to even make feature announcements at the conference as they relate to FinOps. So definitely go to x.finops.org for that. Sooner, we got a couple more things coming up. If you are a Google Cloud user, or if you happen to be in Vegas in a couple of weeks, April 9th at the Mandalay Bay, we're doing a full day event split into different parts. Midday, there is a meeting with Google Cloud product and service leaders who are going to be with us for 3 hours. This is, you've seen Sarah McMullen from our tech, Millen, who's on our governing board. Eric Lamb has been around the foundation for years. All these folks are going to be there to talk about and answer questions one-on-one with Google Cloud customers and partners and our members and member vendors about what's happening in Google Cloud. So definitely check that out, sign up for it. In the evening, we've got a networking reception that is open to our practitioners and member vendors to come and meet with those folks and mingle, have some drinks, have some food. This is the Google version of what we did at AWS reInvent in November. And we have one of these planned now as well for Microsoft Ignite, which is happening in this coming November in Chicago. So look for each of these cloud events to have a way for you to connect with Google Cloud or Microsoft or AWS or Oracle Cloud leaders at each of these things. Now, this event, we're always trying new things, constant testing. You can figure out what works best for this community. But we're doing a new type of event called a member summit. This is bigger than any of our road shows. It's the biggest event happening before FinOpsX and the biggest one in the UK and Europe until November when we have the Barcelona event. This is a few hundred folks in London with 8 hours from noon to 8 p.m. content, networking, all three of the top clouds there presenting, practitioner speakers from Virgin Media, Epic Games, and Vesco. We've got chalk talks and breakouts. There's networking, food, lunch. Encourage you, if you're anywhere near London, I mean, if you're within a couple-hour flight, it's worth popping over for this. We've got a number of people coming from Europe. We have a few people coming over from the US to this. So definitely a good way to get together before the bigger events coming up later in the year. And of course, there are meetups happening all the time. The FinOps Foundation's global community is extremely active. Right now, later you're going to hear from our CTO, Mike Fuller. He's in India, where they're doing 3 meetups in India in 3 different days, back to back to back. There's a couple of photos there from the meetups that just happened yesterday, the day before. More coming pretty much in every region of the world. So I hope you check out events.finops.org to take a look at some of those and hopefully attend those meetups. Those meetups are open to all and in nearly every region. So got through content and the opening on time. Let's get to what you're all here for, which is really to hear from some of the practitioner speakers. So our first speaker, Jerzy, works at Capital One. His boss, Ann Johnston, recently joined the FinOps Foundation governing board. She wasn't able to be here today for this. Jerzy's taken the talk I'm going to share, but I wanted to give a shout out to Ann because she's also on our focus steering committee. She's one of the practitioner leads who's helping work with the cloud providers, the foundation community, and the governing board around aligning standards and best practices for open cost usage and specification data out of those clouds. So I want to give Ann a thank you for all of her work and pass the mic here to Jerzy. And I noticed, Jerzy, I hope you don't mind me saying, as I was looking through Capital One structure, bank titles can sometimes be a little interesting. And it looks like you all don't necessarily have the bank title structure where there's lots and lots of VPs. You have more of a traditional software engineering structure where you're a senior director and you've got a whole set of things that you manage. Can you tell us a bit about your role and what you do at Capital One, and we'll dive into your content?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thanks for having me. So as you mentioned, I roll up to Ann, who's in charge of cloud evolution. FinOps is one of several pillars in how we mature in the cloud, and my function is ultimately FinOps, lead FinOps in the tech organization, and my accountability is around building tooling, defining architecture, driving adoption of FinOps at Capital One. And I lead 5 in the engineering teams to support all that work. If you advance to the next slide, please. Maybe really quickly about Capital One and where we are on the journey. How we approach FinOps definitely has changed at Capital One based on where we've been on our journey. So today, we are on the other side of going all in on the cloud. In 2016, we started that journey. 2020, we shut down our last data center. So we have now been operating in the cloud for some time. And at our scale, that really means that we have an opportunity for efficiency and realizing gains if focused. So that's really, in the last few years, we've really pushed forward on our FinOps investment. And if you speak to any engineer at Capital One, resiliency and security are something like everyone is very aware of. Every day, they know that we need to be resilient, secure, and then get as much things done as possible for our customers. That's the culture. In the last 2 or so years, we've been trying to bring cloud spend into being the third leg of the stool, where people say we're resilient, we're secure, and we're efficient. And for us, scale is our hardest problem statement that I work on. We have 12,000 tech associates, over 2,000 applications, all operating in the cloud. So making sure everyone's doing all the right things makes us think about how do we drive those behaviors through different things. So today I'll just touch on a few, and always happy to leverage the FinOps Foundation to connect with others to kind of share our learnings. Next slide. If I think about my organization and what we go after 4 pillars: people, architecture, standards, tooling, analytics, modeling. Really, our work really nicely maps to the FinOps capabilities that you can find on the FinOps Foundation website. And we really are very in line with what the FinOps Foundation is sharing with you all. So let me kind of go a little deeper, maybe with the next slide, to provide a few examples that you can maybe take away from today's conversation. And really, if I think about what moves the needle, these are some of the things. And the way we approach it typically is we want to start from what's good engineering. So we first look at data, oftentimes, to see where the opportunities could lie. And that typically leads us to one of our larger applications where we have sit downs and architectural reviews of their platform. From there, we have recommendations we typically put together on how to execute on that. And I'll use a real example of pandas versus polars. These are 2 libraries that are leveraged for data processing. And we have found that this platform that was leveraging pandas was really spending a lot of money on what the architecture was actually really well from an infrastructure standpoint. But unfortunately, pandas does not do multi-threading. So just by shifting the library, we were able to improve their performance by 50%, also decrease their costs by 50%, which turned into a very large dollar figure. So once we had that learning, we were able to now implement that into our tools. How do we get others in the company that leverage pandas in a similar way to shift and leverage a different library? And then ultimately, how do we automate it as much as possible? So how do we get closer to the development lifecycle? How do we potentially set certain defaults or checks in our managed pipeline of delivering code to production? So this is really a little bit where one part of my organization, which first starts with outreach, engagement, then does an architectural review, which then leads to an aha moment, and then collaborating with someone else in the organization to execute it, to prove it out. And then how do we figure out how do we scale that through tooling, engineering best practices, standards, patterns in our ecosystem? So one example, but we rinse and repeat this with many different use cases. And one thing I think true and dear to my heart is influence engineers with data that supports design, influence priority with money, and then celebrate both with technical and financial data. I feel like that's been a real, great formula where we get, ultimately, how do we get folks to do the things we feel are important? And you got to really work backwards from, look, what's important to an engineer? What's important to a product person? What's important to a leader. And I kind of call this the power of cupcakes. And really, for me, it's a little joke I just say is like, I'm going to bring a cupcake to bribe you so you can do the thing that I'm hoping that you'll do. But really, that cupcake symbolizes understanding that a lot of engineers, product, et cetera, in your organization have a lot of pressures on them to do certain things. Understanding what those things are and what they're incentivized is really important for making sure that we get folks to listen to us and be convinced and partner with us, and ultimately not just do it because we said it to do it, but because they're excited that they can drive those realizations and savings for the company, and then share that knowledge with others. So if you take one thing away from this talk, is definitely invest in cupcakes and bribing of folks through the form of sweets. It's quite effective. If you just jump to the next slide. As we do many different things across the organization to drive standards, practices, there's an aspect of how do you keep the whole company aligned? Our FinOps practice really didn't take off until we got top-down support and bottom-up support. And what I mean by that is you need to be able to measure what you're trying to accomplish. With that Polars and Pandas example, we were able to provide data in order to sway a design, but we also had data to support that this was financially a really great decision to make, a good investment to prioritize. So when we speak with our executives and we speak with our engineers, there's a few metrics we keep the same. And one is spend efficiency. We really are trying to focus on differentiating good spend from bad spend. And in the tooling we build, we really try to down to the resource level, then app level, division, tower, enterprise. You're able to see what your efficiency is across different resource types. So leaders can see how we're trending, engineers can see where they need to focus. And then of course, with that tooling, we also add well, if you did XYZ, you can increase your efficiency. And that has really allowed us to shift the focus from whack-a-mole, optimize once, optimize twice, to our culture is good engineering is efficient engineering. So therefore, it's an always on practice versus just something I'll do from time to time. So one metric you won't see here is we don't have a thou shall save X dollars this year. We certainly celebrate folks when they do realize savings, but we really focus on spend efficiency. The other number that we really look at is predictability, and we do that through the form of spending to budget. Now, we can set a budget on someone's behalf. That's not going to feel great. So we really are investing time in getting bottoms up engagement from teams to help provide input into what the budget for their applications should be. So when we come around and say, look, you're tracking off your budget, maybe you could do XYZ to get yourself back on track. There is a bit of a handshake and engagement that will allow folks to do it. Or even we might not even have to come to them. They're tracking this themselves. Am I the budget or not? And of course, we have unit economics that helps us figure out where we should focus, where we need to improve. And then we're investing in business metrics to really help leaders decide, look, if we make this big investment in doing XYZ, what does that mean from a cloud cost perspective? So these metrics are more in the terms of every customer that logs into our mobile app, what's the cost of the cloud for that? And it's about that trend. So as we make investments, is that trend in the positive or negative direction? And then altogether, in addition to keeping the company aligned down from an engineer to the C-suite executive, there's an aspect of these metrics help us figure out where to make double down, where to make investments, where do we feel like we can be more effective if we focus more of our time there. So really, I feel like the metrics to me are at the heart of how do you keep that momentum going from year to year, and really shifting that culture from, hey, can you please do this thing tomorrow to save $1 or $2 to, can you please architect your application efficiently? Can you always review the efficiency of your platform and keep that flywheel of investments so you only get stronger at the application level? And if you do that across the whole company, then the whole company benefits. So those are just a few tidbits from what we've learned. Happy to answer more questions. I know we have a little bit of time later. Then if I leave you with anything, is invest in cupcakes and enjoy the FinOps journey, because it's not a one and done. It's definitely something you keep building on.
Jerzy, amazing. We've been collecting questions for you, and one of those is how do you calculate spend efficiency? And at the end, we'd love for you to come back and answer that question and others as they come in. Folks, I'm going to say apologies. It looks like there is a new Zoom chat feature that's listing everybody as they come in and out that just launched since our last summit. We're unable to turn it off without restarting the meeting, so you're going to have to bear with us on that one. We'll get it off hopefully for the next one as part of that. And, last thing I want to say, Jerzy, and I hope, to hear it from others as we go into this, is I love that theme of reinvestment, right? Cost savings is not really the target. And what we're seeing a shift with FinOps very much is that it's moving out of cost savings into how do we use it to drive the business, particularly in the world of AI, which you're going to hear about later from Tarang, which is how you're using, investments in AI to drive business, and then how do you make sure the costs of those are driving enough value, and then how do you make sure your cloud spend is really not about just reducing costs, but it's about resulting in revenue at the end of the day. So great stuff there. So I mentioned earlier, Anne, Jerzy's boss, is on our governing board. The governing board is made up of a mix of practitioner members, all the clouds, vendor members, consultancies, a large number of folks. Capital One has joined us recently as a premier member of the FinOps Foundation, are plugging in a lot of ways. This board, and we're going to hear later from the Technical Advisory Council, which is a different board, different focus. This board is focused on where the FinOps Foundation as an entity is going and investing in programs such as training and education to support the community. This board funds and invests in things like this summit and our big in-person events and certifications, all of those areas. And I wanted to thank them for all their efforts, but also we want to double click with Stacy Case, who's our VP of Professional Development, around some of the developments that are happening in the training and education world with some big announcements.
Yeah, I also let people know that I have control of the spotlight, so I just put the picture on me while JR was still talking, and I'm not upset by that. Anyways, folks, I'm very excited. We have some really great new exciting announcements to talk about today. The first thing I want to talk about is Introduction to FinOps. This is a brand new free course that we just launched very quietly yesterday on learn.finops.org. And the really cool thing about this, if some of you, the OGs that have been here forever, that there was a an intro to FinOps course out there before through the Linux Foundation, but we really haven't touched it since 2020. We've made up for that now, and we have this amazing new course. It is available to everybody. And what it is it really is providing an introduction to FinOps through the lens of a specific persona. So you'll be able to understand about all the basic understandings of the activities that are central to FinOps, as well as the mission of FinOps Foundation. And, a lot of you, if you're already a practitioner, don't go back and do this. You already know this, but it's really great if you want to recommend it out for other people who maybe are brand new to the concept of FinOps, because a wide variety of roles will benefit from that basic understanding. These could be your colleagues who work with you, that they could be professionals who are considering a switch into FinOps career, or maybe even students that are considering a switch. So please check it out. It's free. We're very excited to offer that. And on that vein, let's switch over to the next one. So in addition to launching that this week, we also launched another free course. This one is Introduction to Focus. And of course, Focus is what we've been talking about a lot lately. This course is going to provide you that introduction to the FinOps open cost and usage specification. So after this course, people will be able to basically know what Focus is, why it's important for FinOps practitioners and vendors. You're going to be able to talk about Focus at an introductory level, and then you're going to be able to know where to go out and find more resources. So we've been talking about Focus a lot. We want to give you that guided approach to understand what Focus is. And it's really intended for all of you, right? Anyone who relies on cloud consumption data or requires data from the FinOps team to perform their role, this is for you. And I'm excited to say, in addition to that, we're just getting ready to launch in the beginning of June a brand new certification that is going to be Focus centered as well. It's going to be the Focus Analyst certification. That's coming out in June. This is going to be a much more in-depth course that's going to really be designed for FinOps practitioners, the data analysts, or any individual who needs to query data sets to report or measure FinOps KPIs. So this is really going to be the course for you. I highly recommend you go out and do it. If you go out now and do the pre-sale, if you go to learn.finops.org, there might be a code for 25% off on the website. So if you are interested in signing up for the analyst course later, awesome. If not, the intro to focus is free and available now. Which brings me to a question that comes up now that we're expanding our training catalog is, what do I take? When do I take it? And what's right for me? So again, I just really want to reiterate that that Intro to FinOps course is a great starting point for anybody that is new to FinOps that wants to learn more about FinOps. It is not a certification, so you're not going to take that and be certified in anything. You still will need to, do the practitioner certification, focus, engineer, or professional certification to actually earn your Credly badge and certifications. But if you were thinking about it, if you're brand new, we recommend folks start with that Intro to FinOps course, and then you move on over to either practitioner or engineer. You don't need to do both of those, but you can do one or the other to really help validate your FinOps knowledge. And then from there, if you are that experienced practitioner that's leading a team that's really wanting to dive even deeper into FinOps, that's when we recommend the FinOps professional. And of course, you can always layer focus over all of that. We recommend that regardless of what your role is. So very excited about that. And then the other thing I just want to say is we never want the cost of training to be a blocker for anyone who's committed to, reshaping or help shape the future of FinOps. We have announced last month that we have a $1 million scholarship fund that we'll be awarding out this year. So if you are someone that needs a little help paying for your training or getting training, please go to learn.finops.org. Check out the scholarship information. Again, we're doing $1 million this year that we're going to award out. So very excited about that.
Thank you, Stacy and Natalie and Jackie and Jonathan and everyone who worked on that internally. It was cool to see last year. We gave away over $600,000 of certifications last year from people all around the world. And it was kind of amazing to see the progression of folks as they work through that. So definitely go check those out. We're very excited about the free intro courses as well. We already had, before we announced it, we had like 40 people take it in the last 24 hours after it went live with no notification. So really cool. All right.
200 by this morning. There's 200 by this morning.
200 people. Yeah. Since we put it live, 36 hours ago, didn't tell anybody, and 200 people have taken it. So go tell your friends. It's out there. Everybody wants to know about FinOps. And then people won't be confused at dinner parties when you try to explain what it is you do. So FinOps Framework, we've been at this for a couple of years. It's evolving. I wanted to pass to one of our longtime leads in this area of standards and best practices, Vasilio Markinastasakis, to tell us what's happening as we start to unpack it.
Thanks, Yar. And with thoughts of cupcakes and pandas very much in mind, we're very excited to share with you all Framework 2024. The framework has been updated to reflect the present-day practice of FinOps, and it's been shaped by the contributions and conversations from our community. And if I get you to go to the next slide, if you'll all permit me to be nostalgic for a moment, it seems like yesterday, practitioners in our community, many of you who are on the call today, came together in working groups that helped shape the framework back in 2021. Since then, our community has really grown, and we're grateful to all our community members for sharing your lived experiences at meetups, at FinOpsX, and at summits just like this, for talking with us about your FinOps challenges, and for joining working groups to create resources that address these challenges. Once again, thank you. Our community has helped shape the framework. And today we're going to be walking through the 2024 revisions, including the updated definition of FinOps, simplified framework organization, and kind of walking through that, and enhancements to the framework domains, capabilities, and personas. And it's also worth mentioning, you'll notice on this slide, the FinOps principles and the FinOps maturity model have not been changed. So they're the same as you remember. And if you don't already know, and if I can get you to go to the next slide, JR, this is our FinOps Foundation Technical Advisory Council, the TAC, as we like to call them. And to them, I would like to say a big thank you. Thank you for your guidance, for your contributions, and over the past few months, the great conversations we've had throughout this process. And with that, if I can get you to the next slide, JR, I would love to introduce Kim and invite her to talk about how the framework was updated. And for those of you who don't know Kim, Kim is the Director of Engineering at Target and is also the FinOps Foundation TAC Chairperson.
Thanks, Boz. Hi, everybody. So since the last half of 2023, the FinOps Foundation staff has been working really hard and working closely with the TAC to evolve and ratify the 2024 revisions to the FinOps framework. The FinOps Foundation's TAC reviews proposals to update or change sections of the framework from a variety of sources. It can be working groups, definitely from the state of FinOps, and then other community contributions as well. So the proposed changes are reviewed and voted on during the TAC meetings, and then the approved proposals are incorporated into the framework by the foundation staff, which then communicates these changes like we're doing today to the community that have been TAC approved. So the TAC is really excited to get Framework 2024 to the community. And then just know that practitioners are really encouraged to contribute to the development and maintenance of the framework by continuing to make those suggestions and joining working groups and contributing to the awesome FinOps Foundation content.
Thanks a lot, Kim. And with that, I would like to invite Rob to talk a little bit about why the framework update happened.
Sure, thank you. And I am also very excited to get this launched. This is something that the TAC and the staff have been working on for a bunch of time here. The real answer is because the practice of FinOps has evolved. And so as Vas and Mike and everybody are fond of saying, the framework is for the community, by the community, right? This is a collection of your best practices. And as cloud operations evolve, as companies learn how to do new things and change their practices, they're thankfully sharing that stuff with the rest of the community through all the mechanisms that you've already heard about. So we've seen kind of 4 big categories of changes that we'll see in the specifics of the framework that we'll be announcing today. One is simplifying and clarifying. This is going to be important, I think, as we start to see we're seeing this dramatic increase in the number of people who are doing FinOps. Who are doing more things, who are being part of bigger companies doing this kind of work. And those people are coming to FinOps and they want to see, kind of learn this stuff really as easily as possible. So to clarify that, we've simplified some of the things, some of the language and some of the structure that you'll see in a few minutes. Secondly, we're emphasizing value. We're really focusing, again, as JR said earlier, on changing from looking at cloud cost to really looking at the value that's bringing to the organization and how that's going to be supporting the organization's goals as a whole. Third, we're seeing an expansion of the things that FinOps teams are involved in. We're seeing them getting involved in cloud sustainability and licensing. We're seeing them using tools and services and doing benchmarking and assessments for their organization. And so we've tried to include guidance on how to do those kinds of things as well. Because for the last bullet there, more and more FinOps teams are getting to be an operational part of the organization. They're becoming an integral piece of what organizations are doing and how they're doing it. Jerzy talked about this FinOps being the sort of the table stakes for engineering teams to build good software, to build efficient software. And so more and more companies are seeing that kind of integration happening. If you go to the next slide, JR, many of you probably saw the Insight article about the revision to the FinOps framework, the FinOps definition. FinOps is an operational framework and cultural practice which maximizes the business value of cloud, enables timely data-driven decision-making, and creates financial accountability through collaboration between engineering, finance, and business teams. It's really a streamlining, I think, of many of the key aspects of the FinOps framework definition that have always been in place. But again, you'll see this calling back to the value that cloud is providing, the ability to make good decisions that reflect not only on how we're using cloud, but how our organization is going, and creating the financial accountability, not only at the finance level or at leadership, but all the way down to the engineers who are doing the work every day. And that only happens when we can bring the team together. And I think you'll see these changes reflected through the rest of the changes in the framework. And for that, I'll hand you over to Mike Fuller.
Thanks, Rob. And yeah, we definitely want to sort of echo that excitement to get these updates into everyone's hands. We do really believe this is going to help accelerate, the adoption, the expansion, and the maturity of FinOps practices everywhere. I think the first thing I'll just cover off, though, is that The updates that we're putting in here don't mean that you have to go back to your desk tomorrow and start fresh on the new FinOps that's just been released. Effectively, this is the framework catching up with where FinOps is in the industry today, and some more of that sort of simplification that Rob just covered in order to help and assist you continue to mature your practices that are there and healthy and growing in your organizations. And as that sort of growth and maturity has happened in organizations, we're starting to hear demand for more of the stakeholders to get involved and to contribute into the FinOps process. And the challenge of adding more and more personas is for those who are starting out. All of a sudden, you're seeing this long list of stakeholders that need to get involved and get set up. And so we wanted to make it very clear that there was a sort of core set of personas that are very critical for all of our practices. And then a group of personas that really do play into FinOps in different situations. And so, and so basically we've created with the TAC a core persona group, which are the ones that you're probably very familiar with, and allied personas where we're going to have those situational or the it depends, if I want to quote Rob, it depends personas that really plug into the growing and maturing practices that are there. This has also then allowed us to bring some of those personas that are always sort of being hidden away in the persona pages and bring them up front into the view here. Adding in the ITSM, ITFM, and security personas being added in. We also noticed that we sort of renamed some of the persona names on the core persona side to make them easier to understand, easier to find in the list, but also each and every one of these personas on the framework website, on the framework on the website at finops.org has really good descriptions. We've spent a lot of time clarifying the language around each of these personas. So definitely looking forward to getting into and reading through the persona groups. We move on to them. Oh, sorry. Oh. All right, and so the next thing is really around FinOps domains. And when the FinOps domains were originally built, there was always the intent for them to sort of exemplify the big outcomes for the business. And we feel like looking at those domains that we had in the previous framework, we felt like we could do better. We could make them easier to understand and a bit more clearer language that really did emphasize the fact that domains are the things that you're doing. If I got caught in an elevator and I had to explain what FinOps is doing for an organization, I can just talk along the top line here of all of the domains. And so if you think about it in the case of that's helping us understand our cost, it's helping us quantify that cloud use, and then helping us build efficiency. And in order for us to do that, we have this managing the practice domain that helps us build the FinOps culture. You'll notice that we've gone down in the number of domains here. We've joined the performance tracking and benchmarking and real-time decision-making together because ultimately you're doing those things to really quantify the value of cloud. And then also the rate versus usage optimization, bringing those two together. And this actually tries to avoid that whole conversation around one being more important than the other, one needing to be completed before the other one goes. Effectively, we need to be doing both of these things in harmony with each other. And ultimately, you're doing these things to drive for efficiency. I'll leave Rob, Vaz, if you want to jump in.
I think, Mike, you hit it spot on. I think we're really just trying to refine the domains to focus on, as you said, outcomes versus just sort of like activities. So yeah, and I think we've also heard from the community that this lines up better with how they're doing FinOps today.
Yeah, I think this also captures. Sorry, Mike, the understand, quantify, and optimize are kind of the things that the FinOps team does every day in their practice, the manage the FinOps practice. So I think also captures that recognition that the FinOps practice is more an operational part of the business and needs its own sort of management and oversight as well.
If we could maybe bring Kim back up, if she's got a second. because I really feel like good to hear from the TAC is about this simplification here. And yeah, I think we really like this as staff members, but I'd love to hear the TAC's excitement about this sort of refinement and clearing language.
Yeah, so there was a lot of discussion about the domains during the TAC meetings. And it was clear that just getting more simple was important to the TAC and to the community. It just makes it easier for newcomers and for people who are doing FinOps as a practice to align what work they're doing into these domains. So we were excited to make these changes and shifts to the terminology.
Jay, everyone jump to the next slide. Okay, and so there's a range of different changes that happen to the capabilities that sit under the domains, and in order to make it simple to understand, we've broken them into different groups of activities that has occurred here. For the first is just renaming. Some of the naming on the capabilities was it actually made it hard to find some of them in a list. You notice that some of the previous naming was measuring and managing, and so you're trying to find the capability in the list, and they all start with M. And so there was a bit of just simplifying the language used at the capability level, but also, we all ended up sort of making a shortened version of the name anyway. And so we just sort of made that easier by having a consistent short name for the capabilities themselves. And so we do think that this is more just a simplification step, both in order to have it easier to find on the page, but also referring to the same thing with the same term. And then over to the next, all right, so this is where we start to get a bit more of the impactful changes. And so there's a handful of capabilities that we noticed, and especially propped up in working groups over time, where it was hard to tell the difference between two of the capabilities, or it was like, effectively, if you start doing this capability, you really have a complete one-to-one reliance or dependency on another capability. And so really, instead of having these two capabilities and having language that tried to explain the nitty-gritty differences between the two, we merged them together so that we have a maybe slightly larger capability set. But in many cases, it's sort of either dependent pieces or more of something that you mature into and evolve that practice forward. So if you look at shared costs, managing shared costs versus cost allocation, you ultimately need to have that allocation story well and truly understood before you start maturing into then doing allocation into the shared cost areas. And so across the group here, this was really just a way of us sort of structuring it in a way that we avoid those conversations of, is it this or is it that? The FinOps practice operations also is a good one for us. I think this is really important because it allows us to bring in a lot of the conversation that just didn't fit into the current capabilities that were there. And it sort of brings a larger capability that sort of is all-encompassing around how you're managing the actual practice of FinOps. And so I definitely would love for everyone to go and spend an extra little bit of time reading that capabilities definition page, because I think that it's super important for all of the practitioners on the call.
I guess I'll just add, we were also seeing some of these elements of the merged capabilities, the accountability structure, decision-making, automation, were things that are going on in all the capabilities in a lot of ways. There are ways to automate every aspect of FinOps nowadays. And so that as a separate standalone capability may not have been as important there, but that many of the elements of workload management, of making sure we're turning things off and using things only when we need them, really do fall into workload optimization in an important way.
Yeah, and I'm just going to chime in here too, and just add one thing that we haven't captured in the slides here, but I'd love for folks to take a peek at, is another improvement that we've made is each capability that Mike is walking through now has what's called a capability caption at the top. And this is a way for us to capture sort of what and frame what the capability is about in a short, easy to digest sentence with some key activities for each capability. So looking forward to getting some feedback from what folks think about that update as well.
And next slide. And then where this sort of all really started was the conversation around adding capabilities into the FinOps framework. And I guess, we go almost all the way back to August last year. We're looking at cloud sustainability and sort of how it fit in with the framework. And once we sort of opened that can of worms, we realized that actually it really is a good time for us to sort of look holistically at the updates. And so that was kind of the thing that really triggered this. We wanted to make sure that we had a structure for the framework that really supported the addition of some of these new areas that we wanted to add. And then once we had structured those domains, it really gave us that open door now for these new elements to be added in. Once again, for the practitioners on the call, these would be the areas I would focus very specifically in reading the capability pages for the definitions of, because these are the additions in. And for the most part, these are going to be familiar things that you would expect to read about these areas. And then we'll now work with working groups to figure out how we can fill in any missing gaps in our asset pool that sort of relates to these capability areas. Rob, Baz, is there a particular one then? Sorry, we can just go back one sec. Any one of those particular capabilities that jumps out for you?
I mean, I think the one thing that really I found interesting, a lot of our time was spent talking about architecting for cloud, which I think also, aligns very well with sort of all the shift left conversations that happened. And I know it was a key kind of conversation with the TAC. We spent a lot of time in our TAC talking about this one. Rob, did you have a favorite one there?
Yeah, it's like having children or pets. You can't have a favorite, right? But I guess the interesting ones for me, the two the two big ones I think that for me that are new and maybe have a bigger ring to them: cloud sustainability and licensing and SaaS. Both kind of take into account new, not new, but new focus areas for many FinOps teams, right? And working with how to work with a broader sustainability group at your organization who's looking at things, cloud use and everything else that you have to do sustainability reporting on. And licensing, I think if you've got an ITAM team, they're kind of laser focused on your use of licenses, but really understanding how we can use the licenses we own in cloud is an important aspect. I think those are two areas where we're seeing FinOps teams, or we're hearing that FinOps teams are sort of intersecting with those groups more importantly. And I think these are interesting because we don't want, all of the cloud sustainability doesn't go on in that one capability. All these capabilities are interrelated. We have to ingest the sustainability data. We may have to make decisions or do rate optimization or workload optimization with sustainability in mind, or with our license information about the licenses we own in mind. So both of those, I think, are kind of new areas that are highlighting important areas where FinOps is getting more involved, but that doesn't mean that those things aren't going on or being part of other capabilities as well.
I just wanted to jump in for anybody's not watching the screen. We do have a poll up, and for you to indicate which capability you're most interested in learning more about. We want to add additional resources, so please do. We're going to do that for one more minute while we continue talking. Please do vote on that. We've got about 54% of you so far participating. Want to get a few more.
Actually, then I'll talk about my other favorite one, which is actually not in the poll, and you'll see it in the next slide, but it's the capability it's under manage the FinOps practice, called invoicing and chargeback. And I like this one too, because for a long time in the practice of FinOps, reconciling invoices was sort of like an unsung activity that we all wrestled with. We would get together with our finance friends, and we would look at an invoice, and then we would look at the billing data, and then we would bend and twist into pretzels trying to figure out how to make those align so that our FinOps friends, our finance friends, would walk away smiling. So I think just calling out invoicing as sort of an activity that is something that you have to do, it was something that we wanted to highlight in this framework.
I see architecting for cloud is kind of in the lead there as well. Architecting for cloud really split off in a way from onboarding workloads, which used to sort of look at how we bring workloads into the cloud in the first place. But there's a real important shift we heard from many practitioners about, trying to push that back into the architecture phase of build systems more efficiently from the beginning. And so I think that's great that's getting the love there too.
Okay, so we are at time on the framework, so I'm going to pause there. We had 64% of you vote on that poll. I'm going to play the poll after our final speaker in the conversation section, so stick around to see the results of that poll in just a few minutes here. Any final words, panel, on the capabilities before we move on, and we can come back to questions after that?
No, I think just
maybe just go to the next slide, JR, and we'll look at the whole framework
poster
together. Yeah.
So the poster is available as part of the framework. So you can go to finops.org and get that poster page. It's definitely a good way to sort of position how all this plugs together and fits alongside each other. We will continue to put out more material. I expect an insights post, helping dig into this more, and I'm sure we'll continue to put more and more efforts and opportunities for us to dig into this more and have deeper conversations. This is it's a large update, but it's nothing that I think that would be hard for us to sort of back into as looking at your own practices today and how it parallels to these updates that have occurred.
And it looks beautiful.
I just want to say, Rob, before you jump into this one, I just want to say, keep an eye out for working groups. As I mentioned at the beginning, we're definitely looking at the community to help shape the framework, and we'll be looking to launch working groups on Framework 2024. Sorry, Rob, go ahead.
No worries. I just wanted to say thanks to the graphics folks who made that all look beautiful as well.
Yes.
I just wanted to address this last question. It was John asked the first question right after the first slide. How does this impact me if I'm taking FinOps certified practitioner or certified engineer or certified professional right now? If you were taking those courses, you'll continue to take them. These courses will be updated. As you can imagine, this was a big change to the training course material as well. So that's going to be done over the next few months. In June, we'll see the updates to FinOps Certified Practitioner. And at that point, people who start the course from that point on will be tested on the new material starting from then. Engineer will be done right after that. And then professional will take several months to do that. But if you're waiting to take, that's not a good reason to wait to take your certifications. Anyone who takes these certification courses gets access to the material for a year. So if you are thinking about getting certified now, perfectly okay to start with the existing courses, and then you'll be able to see the updates as they appear. That's value for money right there. So that was it.
That's a really good point. I think nothing in the changes really was this is no longer valid in FinOps. Right. It was all just an evolution. And so anything in the older materials, still very valid. You've seen the links in the chat. This is where the deep dives, everything we've covered today, live now. FinOps Foundation Insights has information about all those changes to the framework, takeaways there, cloud provider updates, as well as executive stories. So check that out as we go. So a big thank you to all of our both vendor members and enterprise members and clouds and all the organizations that support the work we do, help us figure out where to drive forward work, investment, best practices, contribute to the framework, all these areas. I wanted to give our closing time to a gentleman named Tarang Vaish from Granica. Granica has actually been a member of the foundation for over 2 years, but was in stealth and recently came out, and wanted to hear a bit about their journey. He's a co-founder and CTO there, and how they're applying AI and their own challenges internally with AI and cloud.
Yeah. Thanks, Jer. Thank you for that introduction. I think that saves time for me to tell about myself. So as JR was saying, I think you can go back to the previous slide. I'll just start from there. Yeah, so, I'm the co-founder and CTO here at Granica. Quickly about Granica, what we do here is we are a AI efficiency platform, and our focus is primarily on the data foundation of your organization. So what I mean by that is that we help, screen for private information, PI information in your data. We help compress your data so its footprint comes down. We also help optimize your data. So if you're doing AI training with your data, or you're doing inferencing, etc., that costs come down. And finally, we have data visibility tools that specifically look at how your data is, getting like the best ROI for your organization. So we can go to the next slide. Yeah, so I think this is I would add that I'm in that role where I make the cake and eat it as well. So I have to contribute to the platform and also understand how it's going to work for us as a product, and how is it going to be best used for the customer. So Granica platform is a EKS based platform. It runs on a petabyte scale data over S3 and GCS in multiple clouds. What we do, what we have seen over the last year is that we started from like places where we had some model capabilities in our product. I would say about 20-30%. Over the year, I would say last year it has grown to probably 70%. Is the capabilities that the AI models are providing in the product versus the regular software that we have. So what it also has happened is that the cost that we run into internally of like building the product has more than doubled in multiple clouds. So that makes it very challenging to see that how if our costs are doubling internally to build these products, how it is going to affect the product itself and the pricing and the revenue model going forward. So it's very important for us to make the product as efficient as possible. Because you can't change the pricing model just because you added AI internally into your system, added more capabilities. So my role actually is a lot of fun because last year I attended the San Diego conference and I basically have to repeat, the FinOps principles to multiple teams inside the company. Our R&D teams, which are developing the models, or we have, like the product teams, which are trying to deploy models in production. They all are thinking about, just the features, but like they really need to get the context of, who those customers are, what do they think about it, and what really is the end goal for the product and for people practicing, their systems in the cloud. Next slide, please. Yeah. So there are a lot of challenges that are very unique and new with AI. I would think, the biggest thing is like right now, nobody is very certain, what their AI stack looks like. Everybody is assuming that, it's going to change, and we are like, everybody is waiting for GPT-5 to drop or a new Mistral model to drop, something on those lines. And a lot of things that you might be working on today might just change. So if you think that, you are maybe using 70% AI models, in your system today, that may grow to 90%, or it may become so efficient that it may become like just a open source, like, like an or a open AI based like API driven model. So there is a lot of like things that are very evolving right now. And also everybody wants to jump into this, but it's very hard to say how much budget should I set for, adopting AI in my system. So given all these complexities, I think, and our previous learnings of how to build a great SaaS product, I think what I came up with is like, what are the critical constraints, that you should think about? You can also call them non-negotiables. So what are those non-negotiables? The first thing is that, you cannot really, like stop like developer velocity. You really need to make sure that, like people are free and are free to try new AI products, solutions, technologies. The second is that GPU availability is actually a very critical constraint. If you are going to deploy a model in production, you need to make sure there will be GPUs available for it when you go in production. So like as an example, developers may say, oh, can I get the best H100 for my, design and the biggest model that I can deploy? It's going to do wonders, but you can't really have that, available to every customer that you deploy. So you really have to understand, what are non-negotiables, what, is the minimum spec that you need to work with. And also you need to understand what will be the actual, eventual production budget. Keep in mind that that is assumed to be like AI is going to keep getting better. So you would expect that to come down, but you still need to understand what those ballparks are going to be. Next slide. Yeah, so this is the learnings that we have like been trying through this bumpy ride over the last year, at least with LLM especially. is that, we really need to simplify the infrastructure. If you have different teams trying different infrastructure, it's going to become a chaos in the end, because, you would have a lot of mistakes each team is doing and not able to understand, what is the right strategy to take. So you want to not harden the infrastructure right away. You want to keep it very simple. If a developer wants to go develop on a GPU, it should be very straightforward for them to do that. They don't have to think about the cost right away, but then you also still have to bring in the cost later on. The data silo point is very critical for AI especially. What's new here is that data is going to govern how you gonna track progress of your AI journey. If you think that you're gonna just change your model and it's gonna get better, it's not gonna happen right away. It's gonna happen if you continue to calibrate your models with the data that you are going with. So our recommendation here is that you basically come up with good golden copies of your data. One thing is to train your data, and build models. The other thing is to build like a quality engine, so to speak, like a CI engine, where you can actually know that whatever you are doing is actually getting better and it's not regressing. If you change a model overnight to a new model, right, like everything will regress and you have to start from scratch. So that is, the reality with AI right now. So you really have to make sure you have these, things in place. Lastly, bringing that FinOps, learnings into what we are doing. We basically have to make sure that we keep calibrating our budgets, and, we make sure that we don't run over it. So we, apply the FinOps principles in what we do. Yeah. Next slide. Yeah, so here is the thing that we came up with, over our journey. What we do is we have actually local machines with dedicated GPUs, where people are flexible and they can figure out what they want to do. They want to try a new model, go with it. Then we also have third-party clusters where we have big GPUs available and we can train systems, etc. And ultimately, we make sure that, we are from the beginning running these models in production and always monitoring what the eventual costs are going to be, because all these things have to work together. So you really have to have all this stuff set up from the beginning to make sure that, you don't go completely out of whack. Yep, next slide. Yeah, so the big takeaways is you really need to understand what your non-negotiables are, because it is chaos right now. And, there is a lot of risks if you go in one direction and not understand, the solution later on is not viable, etc. You need to have close control over your data, because data is your yardstick of actually your AI journey. And ultimately, you also, need that flexibility of the cloud and other solutions to make sure you get things on time. Yeah, next slide.
Awesome, Tarang. So where can people, hear more? Are you sticking around for a bit? Can you?
Yeah, I can stick around for a bit, and you can hear about us at Granica, like at FinOps members/Granica, or you can connect with us or go to granica.ai.
I think you're going to be at FinOps X too, aren't you?
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you. So that is the end of the content. We're now going to move into, and hope Tarang and everybody sticks around for conversations. I wanted to, before we wrap though, give a big thank you to the people who make this and everything you've seen possible. This is the FinOps Foundation staff. Behind the scenes, there are almost 30 people, full-time people, who we all work for the Linux Foundation, are dedicated to making all the changes to community, to training and education, to frameworks, to focus happen. This group has been busting their buns repeatedly for months on many things, but especially getting ready for this summit and now getting ready for FinOps X. So a big thank you to everybody, and a special shout out to Suha Shim, who produces these summits for us each and every month, and everybody else who worked on this. The list is too long, unfortunately, now, but thank you for your efforts.
Thank you for watching. We hope to see you during our next virtual summit. In the meantime, check out previous summits or the rest of our YouTube channel. We appreciate the support.